Hi, Jack Canfield here, and welcome back to another episode of Talking About Success. My next guest is Michael Angelo Costa. He's the author of Never Be Wrong Again. Wouldn't we all love to never be wrong again? 4 steps to making better decisions in work and life. It's a really great book. It was an Amazon #1 bestseller in the US, Canada, Australia, and #2 in the UK, and named #1 on Amazon's hot new releases list. That's a real honor. So what made you decide to write a book about decision making?
Well, I, like most people, didn't think I needed one. Life is going well. I'm making a good living, and therefore, by validation, I'm doing well in life. I don't need to make bad decisions. But one day in my role as investment banker, I flew out to the West Coast to make a presentation to the board of directors of a publicly traded company on a complex $2 billion deal. On the way out, I look at the resumes. They have spectacular educational backgrounds, great business acumen, all things you would like in a board of directors. So what I was doing, I made my presentation, 20 minutes on the mark, but right after the presentation, 4 board members got into a discussion, really a debate or an argument of whether to go forward or not. And I was concerned because it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. But I said to myself, and I don't know why you have an epiphany that day and not 10 years before, I said, these people are smart. They just heard the same thing from the same person at the same time, but they've come to different conclusions pretty quickly, and they're hard. I said, that doesn't make any sense. They don't have any decision-making process. Now, I don't like process. I'm an intuitive guy, not a linear guy. But I did use the word process in my mind. But the real epiphany wasn't that they didn't have one. I didn't have one either. That didn't make sense to me. So I said, when I go back to New York, I'm going to buy a book about decision making. And frankly, if I knew then all the effort it would take to write the book, I don't think I would have done it. So I embarked on a 10-year journey of research, reading, in order to see if I could find a book or an academic article that would get me on the right path.
And you didn't find one, so you had to write it.
I didn't find one. I was really surprised. I didn't find one at all. I found a lot of great information about psychology, both in commercial books and things of the common mistakes we make, how you nudge people to make good decisions or bad decisions, but not a how-to, not a how to make a decision. I went to academic journals, which were slightly painful to read, but enlightening. So I decided to write the book, and that's what I did.
You know, when I was a graduate student in college, I had a professor say, if you're looking for a book and you can't find it, it means you're supposed to write it. So you did that. Okay. So you came up with a 4-part plan for decision making. Talk about that. How'd you come to the 4-part plan?
Well, that's the risk I took. I didn't know if there was an answer. I already know the answer, go to validate it. I didn't know there was an answer. I didn't know if it was a 22-point plan, a 15-point plan, a 7-point plan, or a 0-point plan. Now, I had an advantage, in addition to the research, I had interaction with a lot of boards of directors, CEOs, and C-suite people. They make a lot of decisions. So I interviewed them, observed them on what went right and what went wrong over the course of a number of years. And I want to see when decisions worked out, why I think they worked out well. When they didn't work out, why not? And I got it down to the 4 points. And the 4 points are, for anything, is timing, balance, probability, and pattern recognition. Now, the important thing is I learned along the way, I was thinking of business decisions. What I learned along the way when giving presentations while I was writing the book is that everybody wants to know how to do things in their personal life. So it applies to personal decisions as well, like marriage, investing on your own, medical decisions, in addition to business.
So you mentioned 4 parts.
Yes.
Let's go back and let's go over those in a little more depth. So unpack those a little bit for us.
Okay, the only one you have to do first is timing. It's the easiest. It sounds silly. People get it wrong all the time. It's not just 2 things. A decision now, when do you have to make it? Most important decisions in life, whether they're business or personal, there's no deadline. There's no April 15th for marriage or not. There's no April 15th or December 31st for a merger. They don't have a deadline. You have to set one. That's the first rule. Number 2 in timing is, when do you go back and revalidate a pre-existing decision? We've always done it that way as a common refrain. You look back on what things have done, especially large organizations, and they go, we've always done it that way. You have to go back and challenge whether that decision, let's say, was valid 20 years ago, is still valid today. That's the timing part. Balance is a classic case of risk versus reward. The research has shown, though, that we underestimate the risk and we keep our eye on the reward. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take risk. I take risk. My kids are in tech startups. They take risk. But know the risk you're taking, be prudent about it, and the reward will come.
Now, you used an example in the book. It was the Howie Mandel TV show with the...
Yes.
Talk about that.
Deal or no deal.
Deal or no deal.
You know, I'm flipping through, now I want to apply this to topics, right? And I'm flipping through Deal or No Deal. And it's an exciting show. And there's one guy on there that you had to root for. He was such a great guy. You wanted him to win. As you go through there, you start spotting, oh, I wouldn't have done that then. Now, not knowing what the number's going to be out next. And you learn a lot of things from that. One, the facts are as they are. You can't make them up. Number two, if you're upset because the last number came out not your way, you can't change it. All decisions are forward-looking. Mm-hmm. It's risk, not the amount of money you want. In life, as in Deal or No Deal, you want more money, but you don't want to. It's the risk. Are you willing to take the risk for the reward? And so you can learn from Deal or No Deal, which is a very simple game show, a lot about decision making. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like that example.
Yeah, it was a great example. I enjoyed reading it. So what's the third part of the plan?
Probabilities. Now, you always want to have the highest probability of achieving your goal, no question about it. It's not a 100% guarantee, but the highest probability. But the thing about probabilities I like, you have to be specific about your goal. You can't say, I want to be better. I want to be a bigger company. I want to make more money. Be specific. And when you get narrow, then you know what your goal is, and you tailor yourself to having the highest probabilities of achieving that goal. I find people's goals are too broad.
So as I remember when I was reading through the book, you use an example in marriage. You talked about if it's a 50-50 probability, that's not a pretty good probability. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, okay, when you have a big bet, let's say you're going to a casino and you don't really care. You hope to win, you might lose. If you put down $20 or $50, whatever you can afford, it's no big deal, you enjoy yourself. If you put down $1 million, when $1 million is a lot to you, people would say, that's crazy. If it was a 90% chance of you winning, they may say, oh, it's a little crazy, it's $1 million, but it's not a bad bet. Mm-hmm. The bigger the outcome, the more important it is, the more certain you have to be. So if you're going to marriage, which is probably the biggest personal decision you'll make in your life, financially and emotionally, if you're not sure, it's a coin flip, no. You wouldn't bet $1 million at poker. Don't bet it on your life either. You want to have an 85 to 90% certainty that this is the right spouse for you. That's the threshold for a big bet.
And then a fourth point?
Pattern recognition. Now that kind of separates the wheat from the chaff. It's a little bit more difficult, but you have to do it. So pattern recognition is very simple. What past trends can I look at to predict future behavior, a future outcome? So is it relevant? Is there correlation? Is there relevance and causation? And people get the correlation and causation confused. So if I say 100% of the people that drank milk became drug addicts, you would say, wow, milk causes drug addiction. Well, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. And 100% of the people that aren't addicts also drank milk. That goes to show you how you can take correlation and kind of confuse yourself to get the right answer. And today, in today's internet, you can find correlation among anything. What you're looking for, causation. Does A cause B? And that's what you want to seek out. Mm-hmm. So that's pattern recognition. It's a difficult thing, but I have in the book a way to break it down to easy components so you can take a lot of data. The problem with this, we have too much data today.
True.
So I have tips for how to take all that data and simplify it and put it into buckets so you can make a rational choice.
Very good. Now you talk about common fallacies that people have about decision making. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll limit it to a few because there's many.
Okay.
The first one is that I ask people, what's your plan? They say, well, I consider all the options and I choose the best one. I go, that's great. That's not a plan. I said, let's say the LA Rams are back in town, right? I think they are downtown, the new team. Mm-hmm. So I go, I'm going to interview to be the head coach. And I go, I'm going to have an undefeated season. I'm going to win the Super Bowl. How? every time we take the field, I'm going to score more points than the other team. And people look at me and go, well, Mike, that's the definition of winning. And by the way, the opposing coach has the same plan. The person that wins has a plan on how to achieve the goal. When I say I'm going to consider all the options and choose the best one, on a timely basis, I might add, that's the goal of decision making. That's not a plan. And by the way, people have micro checklists, like 5 ways to approve a finance deal, or Atul Gawande, his book, The Checklist Manifesto for Surgeons to Avoid Infection. But when you're outside of your area of expertise, considering all the options and choosing the best one is not a plan. And no one yet I've ever met, organizationally, as a company or personally, can describe to me their decision-making plan when they're outside their area of expertise. That's the first thing. Considering all your options and choosing the best one is not a plan. The second one is people go, well, I understand what people that are not as educated and as smart as I am, fill in your name here, need a plan, but not me. I am a member of Mensa, and I have 3 graduate degrees. Well, the research is very, very clear. We are not biologically designed any different than we were back in the jungle. We have smartphones and computers, but we're biologically designed to react and think quickly and not think too much. And thinking a lot burns off a lot of calories, and we're designed not to do that. Being smart is great. It's an attribute. LeBron James is 6'8", 250. Well, I have another person 6'8", 250. They're big, but they may not be skillful. So being smart is an attribute, it's helpful, but it's not a way to make you automatically a good decision maker.
Very cool. Now, you talk about people procrastinate and they stress out about important decisions.
Sure.
Talk about that and why we do it perhaps, and then what can we do about that? What's the solution to that?
Well, I think that almost everybody does. And there's a couple things. One is the normal stress. It's very important to you. And stressful, what do I do? It's really, what do I do? I think subconsciously, they know they don't have a plan. So it's very important. They put off thinking about it until the last minute. It's not good. And you have stress. If you have a plan and you have confidence in that plan, you say, it's an important outcome I need. I'm going to think about it in a programmatic way. I'm confident I'll come to the right conclusion and I'll have less stress. There's no need to procrastinate.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at the title, Never Be Wrong Again.
Yeah.
Make better decisions starting now. 4 steps we talked about to making better decisions in working life. Do you really think it's possible for someone never to be wrong again?
That's a great question, and I guarantee you read the book, you'll never be wrong again. Let me define being wrong.
Okay.
You want to have the best outcome. That's your goal, to have the outcome you want. But you can't guarantee the outcome. Why not? You can have the best laid plans for building a business in California, Hawaii, and there's an earthquake or a dictator in North Korea sends a missile in. There are things you can't control. You have to understand what you can control. Being wrong is when you go, I could have gotten the outcome I wanted if I considered this. I should have considered this, and then my life would have been better. You'll never have to say, I should have considered this. The point of a plan, of a checklist, is to make sure you don't make a mental error. So you're only wrong when you could have gotten the outcome you wanted if you had thought about it in a clear way. So and you'll never be wrong again if you have a plan. Very
good. Well, I don't ever want to be wrong again. I leafed through this book today. I'm going to read it in greater depth now. So thank you for writing this. This book is really full of great research, great examples, good information. I was really impressed with it. And I'm not all that impressed with that many books. So this was a really good one. So
thank you.
Never Be Wrong Again. So in addition to finding this, I assume, in all the normal places,
yes.
Amazon.com, places like that, if people want to get a hold of you, are you available to be gotten a hold of and be a consultant or a speaker or trainer?
Absolutely,
whatever?
I am. NeverBeWrongAgain.com. It's not just for the book. It's background about me and blogs and speaking engagements. But remember, the goal of everything I do, whether it's reading the book, me consulting or speaking, is not to make the decision for you. It's to empower you to make better decisions when I'm not around.
Now, we were talking before we came on air too about you would love to get this book read by people in positions of power, like people at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue,
Yes.
people in Congress and so forth. So if that's you watching this, or you know someone that can get this book to those people, it would be so much helpful to our country and the world if we could get our decision makers to be using a plan like this to make decisions. So I wish you success with that goal, because we'll all benefit from it. So I wish we had a lot more time. Unfortunately, we don't. We'll be right back after this message, so please stay tuned.